Alright, this is going to be a very brief video covering chapter 2, which is about finding ideas to research. So finding topics to research can be difficult, but sometimes your curiosity or professional experience might generate topics. So for example, something I've been curious about, many teachers are quitting during COVID, but what is making the ones who stay? What is it about them? And so that would be maybe a survey study that could be done to figure out what characteristics or requirements or necessities are keeping teachers in the profession when there's so many things that are challenging. Another thing obviously is you have to, because you have an assignment, a thesis, or you have to write a grant. Other research that you may want to pursue. And then serendipity. This is actually a true story. When I was at LSU, I had co-chairs. I had 2 chairs for my dissertation, and my quantitative professor was working with the STEM. There was a STEM support kind of organization for minorities and women in the STEM fields. And one of the things they couldn't understand was why students who did really well in high school, they would come to LSU and they would do really well in their freshman year, and then they would tank. They would just, completely mess up. And I was sitting in his office talking to the director of this program, and she said she thought it was because, their high schools were probably pretty advanced, and by their sophomore year, they'd gotten to stuff that was more difficult for them. So maybe the freshman year was a review. And I said, I don't think that's it. I said, I was one of those students. In fact, I had started in engineering when I was in an undergrad way back in the dark ages. And that was me. I did really well in my freshman year. And I remember distinctly when I came home, or my roommate in my dorm came home, and she said, Renee, why are you always doing your homework? You're such a dork. And it finally dawned on me at the end of my freshman year that I didn't have to do my homework every day. I mean, I should have, but I was, 18 and young. And then I didn't do poorly, but I certainly discovered that my mother was no longer there, and I proceeded to have fun as an undergrad. So that was kind of serendipitous, and they both kind of looked at each other and thought, well, there's your answer. And so that could potentially lead to a research study. Okay, a literature review. This is kind of the bane of everyone's existence. Nobody likes to do them, or at least I've never met anyone who likes to do them. I certainly do not, but they're necessary, and there's a quote from the book: there is no need to study something that has been done over and over again unless you have a unique perspective on the subject. A good literature review is important in assisting you in becoming more knowledgeable about the research subject. So how can you become an expert if you haven't read exhaustively about that topic, which is what you'll do in your dissertations, and for any research study. You need to kind of investigate what's out there, because you may have a great idea. This happens to me all the time. I say, ooh, I have a great idea, and then I go look around and I'm like, oh, so other people have had the same idea. So then you go deeper into the research and you think, how can I tweak my idea a little bit so that it's a new study? All right, and then theory. How does theory play into our research? So theory is a set of statements logically linked to explain some phenomenon in the world around us. There's deductive and inductive, and I'm just going to kind of read this, and you'll see the difference. So deductive is when a theory is used, the theory is used to generate research ideas about a certain behavior and attitude. So that you start with, you have the theory in advance. For example, homophily. When we form social relationships to those who are like us, you go from the general. We know that this is a phenomenon that happens. We tend to gravitate to people who are like us, and so from that we would devise a study to go and confirm or affirm this assertion. Whereas the opposite is inductive, when you have a set of observations or empirical data and it's used to construct a general system of linked statements. So after observing that students hanging out, you decide that birds of a feather flock together, And so you come to this realization by observations. It's kind of like grounded theory and qualitative data analysis. You use your observations to create a theory. Okay, and ethics. At UHCL we have our CPHS, which is also in every other place in the world called IRB, which stands for Institutional Review Board. The Committee for the Protection of Human Subjects is what we call it. There are 3 parts: autonomy, participants have the right to participate or not if they choose; beneficence, the researcher will do no harm; justice, no particular group will be favored over another. Go and watch the video. It's kind of a little bit medical focused, but it gives you a good sense really quickly of the trajectory of ethics and human subjects research. And then finally, one thing I want to say, this isn't necessarily in the book, but, and this is entirely my opinion, survey versus questionnaire. These terms are really interchangeable, and most people use questionnaire and survey to mean the same thing. But in my mind, they're slightly different. To me, a survey, well, let's start with questionnaire. To put it simply, a questionnaire is a list of written questions aimed at getting information about individuals. A questionnaire is usually limited in scope, and it isn't used for gathering data or analyzing statistics. So I got that from this website down here. So there are other people who believe like me. To me, a survey involves gathering data to use for analysis and forecasting. As opposed to its questionnaire cousin, the data isn't analyzed in isolation. Surveys do look for trends, behaviors in the bigger picture. So another way to put it, a questionnaire is a one-purpose data collection through a set of questions. A survey is data collection through a set of questions for the purposes of statistical analysis. I'm going to go a little bit further and say, to me, say you're doing something that's incredibly new, for example, the COVID question of teachers. You would just send out a questionnaire and get perceptions. You could say, why are you staying in the profession? What are the issues that have arisen for you? And it's just kind of, you could do it either as a quantitative measure with a Likert items, or you could do it as an open-ended, more qualitative. Survey is when you have a construct, say self-efficacy or resilience, and it's been tested and published survey that has been used. You know the validity, you know the reliability. Sorry, my dog keeps walking around. Hold on. Okay, so in summary, a questionnaire can be information gathering, and you're not necessarily trying to prove or establish some sort of construct, whereas a survey would be something where you're trying to establish presence or absence of a certain construct, like grit or resilience or achievement or leadership, for example. And again, this isn't written in stone, my opinion. Okay.